Good morning, happy Thursday, and welcome back to ELA. It's been a couple days since we were in our story, so we will be picking up where we left off on Monday. All you'll need is a pencil and a skills packet if you have some extra time, and by the end of today, you'll turn in Thursday, September 24th, ELA. Today, we're going to be reading about Toad's Adventures. Our objective is to ask and answer questions, to demonstrate understanding of a text, and we're going to refer explicitly to the text as a basis for our answers. We'll have a read aloud. Some of you will be working on the beginning of the year assessment, and then everybody will be submitting an exit ticket at the end. Again, we're not going to follow along in anything today. We'll just have the exit ticket at the end. So keep these vocabulary words in your brain and remember them as we are reading through our story. They will come up in our exit ticket. Our first vocabulary word is disguise. Say it. Disguise. And that's a costume that hides who you are. Our next word, distress. Say it. Distress. And this is great difficulty, sadness, or pain. And then our final word today, pursue. Say it. Pursue. And this is to follow someone or something in order to catch or attack them. So today we're going to be focusing on the point of view of our story. There are three possible point of views in a story. First person, and this is where the story is told through the person's eyes. So it's told through their eyes. First person would include words like I'm doing, things that person is doing. So I. Second person places the reader in the story. So that would use the word you. And third person is objective. So it's an outside view. It's as if we are omniscient or looking down. It's a limited view, but we use words like he, she, or they. Thinking about these 3 points of view, which point of view does the author of The Wind of the Willows have the narrator use? Do we see words like I? We don't see words like I, so we can rule out first person. Do we see the author use the word you? We don't, so we can also rule out second person. This leaves third person, and this is the point of view of the wind and the willows. It's an objective, outside view. There's a narrator. We're telling the story from an omniscient, limited view, and they're using words like he, she, they to describe the story. So it's a third person point of view. What themes have we heard so far in our story? We've heard about themes of friendship, loyalty, hospitality, responsibility, and irresponsibility. Today, we're going to hear more about the theme of irresponsibility. Would you consider Toad to be responsible or irresponsible based on his actions so far? Thinking back to what we read on Monday, Toad to me does not seem responsible. He stole a motor car and he lied to his friends. He said that he was not feeling well, but really it was just a trick. And he even lied to Badger earlier on in that chapter, saying that he'd seen the error of his ways, but he really hadn't. He was just lying so that he could get out of the situation. So far he's been very irresponsible. Now that Toad has been sent to prison, what do we think will happen? Do you think being locked up will teach Toad to mend his irresponsible ways? And do you think Mr. Toad will serve his 20-year sentence? We'll have to see what happens today. Listen carefully to our story for the key words that signify this is a third-person point of view and to hear if our predictions are correct. So the words we're going to be looking for to signify that this is third person, that's he, she, they, and their. And with that, let's get started. Here we are. We left Toad in the last chapter that he was going to go serve his time. When Toad found himself in a dark dungeon, he flung himself on the floor and cried. "This is the end of everything," he said. "Imagine Toad in prison for stealing a motor car and for lurid cheek. Stupid animal that I was," he reproached himself. With lamentations such as these, he passed his days, refusing his meals. So Toad is feeling pretty upset with himself. He realized that this is his fault. He said, imagine that he was in prison for stealing a motor car and for lurid cheek, so being disrespectful or rude to the police. And he's reproaching himself. That means he's scolding himself. The jailer had a daughter who assisted her father. The jailer's daughter was particularly fond of animals. This kind-hearted girl said to her father one day, "Father, if you let me look after the Toad, I'll make sure he eats." Her father replied that she could do what she liked with him. He was tired of Toad. So that day she knocked at the door of Toad's cell. "Now cheer up, Toad," she said, "and dry your eyes. Please do eat some dinner. See, I've brought you some of mine." It was Bubble and Squeak, and its fragrance reached the nose of Toad, but he stubbornly refused to eat. Instead, Toad wailed and would not be comforted. So the wise girl retired for the time. So Bubble and Squeak is a traditional English dish made of leftover vegetables. It has potato and cabbage, and it's often made with a meat roast. When the girl returned some hours later, she carried a tray with a cup of fragrant tea steaming on it, and a plate piled up with hot buttered toast. Toad sat up, dried his eyes, and sipped his tea, and munched his toast. Before long, he began talking freely. The jailer's daughter saw that this social interaction was doing Toad as much good as the tea. "Tell me about Toad Hall," said the girl. "Toad Hall," said the Toad proudly, "is a gentleman's residence dating from the 14th century. It is 5 minutes from church, the post office, and the golf course. Suitable for—" "Gracious," said the girl, laughing, "I don't want to buy it. Tell me something real about it. But first, wait till I fetch you some more tea and toast." So Toad is bragging about all of these amenities of his house, how close it is to everything. And the girl says that she doesn't want to buy it. Tell me something real about it. So she's pushing him for some real details about his home. She skipped away and presently returned with a fresh trayful, and Toad, munching on another buttered piece of toast, told her all about Toad Hall. They had many interesting talks together after that, and the jailer's daughter grew very fond of Toad. One morning the girl spoke to Toad in an exceptionally thoughtful manner. "Toad," she said, "I need you to listen carefully. I have an aunt who is a washerwoman. So she washes clothes, she washes laundry." There," said Toad kindly. "Never mind. I have several aunts who ought to be washerwomen." "Do be quiet, Toad," said the girl. "As I said, I have an aunt who is a washerwoman. She does the washing for all the prisoners. If you were to offer her some money, I believe she would let you have her dress and bonnet, and you could escape in disguise. You're very alike in many respects, particularly about the figure." So, in other words, the jailer's daughter thinks that Toad looks like her washerwoman aunt. "We're not," said the Toad in a huff. "Toad, I'm trying to help you," exclaimed the girl. Yes, I see. Thank you very much," said Toad hurriedly. "But you wouldn't surely have Mr. Toad going about disguised as a washerwoman?" "I suppose you want to escape in a horse-drawn carriage," the girl retorted. Toad began to see the error of his ways. "You are a kind girl," he said. "Please introduce me to your aunt, and I am sure we can come to a mutually agreeable arrangement." So Toad, even in this moment, is still a little full of himself. The girl tells him that she has an aunt who's a washerwoman, and he starts to think she's ashamed of that. He says, "Oh, no need to be ashamed. I have some aunts who should be washerwomen," as if that's too low of a job. But then, when she says that she would be willing to help Toad if he offered her some money, he is too good to even dress as a washerwoman. He starts to say that he's above that. But by the end of this part of the story, He sees the error of his ways and says, "Please introduce me to your aunt." So it seems like he's going to go along with this plan in order to escape. Next evening, the girl ushered her aunt into Toad's cell. The sight of certain gold coins sealed the deal. In return for cash, Toad received a cotton print dress, an apron, a shawl, and a black bonnet. The only stipulation the old lady made was that she should be gagged and bound and placed in a corner of Toad's cell. This way, she hoped to escape suspicion that she had helped Toad escape by making it look like she had been attacked. Toad was more than willing to oblige, and when the time came, he tied her up with great gusto. "Now it's your turn, Toad," said the girl. "Take off that coat and waistcoat of yours." So not only is he escaping in disguise, the washerwoman wants him to make it look like he forced this on her. She doesn't want to seem like she was complicit in this decision, so now Toad is also going to be seen as tying up this washerwoman, so attacking her, stealing her clothes, and escaping. And here he is. Shaking with laughter, she helped him into the dress. "You're the very image of her," she giggled. "Now good luck, Toad." With a quaking heart, Toad set forth cautiously. He was soon surprised to find that the washerwoman's squat figure, in its familiar cotton dress, opened every barred door, including the one that opened onto the outside world. So his disguise worked, and everyone let him through. Toad immediately walked toward the nearest town. As he walked along, he spotted some red and green lights a little way off, and the sound of puffing of engines. "Aha," he thought, "a railway station." He made his way to the station and found that a train, bound more or less in the direction of his home, was due to leave. "More luck," said Toad, as he went off to buy his ticket. He gave the name of the station that he knew to be nearest to Toad Hall, and mechanically reached into his waist pocket for his money. But here the cotton gown thwarted his efforts. As a line began to form behind him, the Toad slowly began to realize that not only was there no waistcoat in the gown, but there was no money either. Forgetting his disguise, the Toad commanded the attention of the clerk. "I am Toad of Toad Hall. I've left my money behind," he offered. "Give me a ticket, and I'll send the money on tomorrow." The clerk ignored Toad's request. "Stand away from the window, please, madame," the clerk ordered. Full of despair, he wandered blindly down the platform. What was to be done? As he pondered, he found himself opposite the engine, which was being tended to by its driver. So he doesn't have any money, and he can't get home on this train, and the clerk ignored Toad even saying who he was. His disguise is apparently so good that the clerk doesn't even believe that he is Toad. "Hello, madam," said the engine driver. "What's the trouble?" "Oh, sir," said the Toad, crying afresh, "I am a poor washerwoman, and I've lost my money and can't pay for a ticket." "That's a bad business indeed," said the engine driver. "Lost your money and can't get home. And got some kids, too, waiting for you, I dare say." "Any amount of them," sobbed Toad, "and they'll be hungry and playing with matches." So, why do you think Toad is saying all of this? It seems like he's trying to get the engine driver to offer some sympathy to Toad. He's lying about who he is and lying about having children and saying that his kids will be hungry and playing with matches, so they'd be unsafe and starving if they don't let him ride the train. "Well, I'll tell you what I'll do," said the engine driver. "If you'll wash some shirts for me when you get home and send them along, I'll give you a ride on my engine." Toad agreed and scrambled up into the cab of the engine. Of course, he had never washed a shirt in his life. The guard waved his flag, the engine driver whistled, and the train moved out of the station. So his plan worked. Even though he didn't have money, he got some sympathy from the engine driver and promised to wash his shirts, even though he's never washed shirts before. And here he is. They had covered many a mile when Toad noticed the engine driver was leaning over the side of the engine. Then he saw him climb onto the coals and gaze out over the top of the train. Then he returned and said to Toad, "It's very strange. We're the last train running in this direction tonight, yet I'm sure I heard another following us. Toad became alarmed. By this time, the moon was shining brightly, and the engine driver, steadying himself on the coal, could see more clearly the line behind them. Presently he called out, "I can see it now. It's an engine coming along at a great pace. It looks as if we're being pursued." So it followed. The miserable Toad crouched in the coal dust. So it seems like Toad believes the train following them is coming for him. The engine is crowded with policemen and the strangest lot of people, all shouting the same thing. "Stop!" cried the engine driver. At that moment, Toad fell on his knees and cried, "Save me, dear Mr. Engine Driver. I am not a washerwoman. I am the well-known Mr. Toad. I have just escaped from prison." The engine driver looked down upon him very sternly and said, "Now tell me the truth. What were you put in prison for?" "It was nothing very much," said poor Toad. "I only borrowed a motor car." The engine driver looked very grave and said, "I fear that you have been a wicked Toad, but you are evidently in distress, so I will not desert you." They piled on more coals. The engine leapt, but still their pursuers gained. The engine driver wiped his brow and said, "It's no good, Toad. They have a better engine. There's just one thing left. A short way ahead of us is a long tunnel, and on the other side of that the line passes through a thick wood. I will put on all the speed I can while we are running through the tunnel. When we are through, I will put on the brakes. The moment it's safe to do so, you must jump and hide in the wood. Then I will go full speed ahead again." So Toad tells the engine driver who he actually is, and he agrees to help him because he's in so much distress. Toad is being pursued by this train behind them. They saw all these policemen inside of it, and he's going to try to jump off the train and into the wood. They piled on more coals, and the train shot into the tunnel and out at the other end. The wood lay dark and brooding upon either side of the line. The driver shut off the steam and put on the brakes. The Toad got down on the step, and as the train slowed, he heard the driver call out, "Now jump!" Toad jumped, rolled down an embankment, and scrambled into the wood and hid. Peeping out, he saw his train get up speed again. Then out of the tunnel burst the pursuing engine. It didn't take long for the Toad to realize that it was now very late and dark, and he was in an unknown wood. After so many weeks within walls, he found the wood strange and unfriendly. Toad walked until he could walk no further. At last, cold and tired, he sought the shelter of a hollow tree where he slept till the morning. And that's where we're going to stop today. So a lot happened in this story. Toad meets the jailer's daughter, and she agrees to help him, or she suggests disguising himself and escaping from prison. Toad initially is not interested in this because he doesn't want to dress like a washerwoman, but then he sees that this is the way to get out, and he does agree to it. When he gets out, he is not believed to be Mr. Toad, and he keeps telling people that he is, which doesn't seem like a very good idea since he just escaped from prison. But he gets the sympathy of the engine driver and gets on the train, and even though he eventually tells the engine driver who he actually is, he still agrees to help him escape. So he jumps off the train while the pursuing train is following them and is now in the wood. He doesn't know where he is. It's dark and he's cold, and he's just hiding in a tree for now. So you might have made a prediction at the beginning of this chapter whether Toad would mend his irresponsible ways or serve his 20-year sentence, and we see that he's done neither of these things. If anything, he's become more irresponsible, and he obviously is not serving his 20-year sentence. He escaped very quickly. When Toad is in the dungeon, what is his state of mind? So how does he feel? So he's in distress, he's crying, he won't eat, and he admits that he was stupid for stealing the motor car and for his impertinence to the police and the magistrate. So he's actually starting to feel bad about what he has done. But how does he eventually manage to escape? The jailer's daughter, so she feels really sorry for Toad and helps him find a disguise from her aunt. What is the first thing Toad does once he escapes? He goes to the railway station because he wants to go back to his house. station, we see that he wants to buy a ticket, but realizes he left all his money at the dungeon, and he tells the clerk who he is, Toad of Toad Hall, but he doesn't believe him. After that, he finds the engine driver and tells him this fake story about how he has children who are starving and probably playing with matches, and he gets his sympathy and agrees to let him on the train. After that, he escapes from the policeman because the engine driver finally figured out who he is, and he still has sympathy for him since he's in so much distress, and he helps him to get off after the tunnel. So what theme is portrayed in today's Read Aloud? Irresponsibility. There's a lot of examples of irresponsibility in this chapter. Toad is irresponsible, and instead of staying in the jail and accepting punishment for what he did, he disguises himself, lies, and he escapes his responsibility. So at this point, we are now to completing our assignments. You may or may not see this in your assignment description today, just like the last several times we've had the SRA. If you do not, that's okay. If you do, this is just like the last several. It's a different passage, and then there are some questions at the end. If you don't have it, your first step is going to be the exit ticket, which is Thursday, September 24th. On your exit ticket, you will see some vocabulary questions. You'll need to select the correct answer. The second part is discussing point of view. So what point of view is The Wind in the Willows written from? We talked a lot about examples of using the words he, she, they, and their in this story. Which point of view does this represent? And then finally, what theme is portrayed in today's Read Aloud? And what events from the story demonstrate this theme? We just talked about this, so if you need to back up the video to help you with this part, that is okay. In order to find your assignment, go to Classwork, Week 3, September 21st through 25th, and find Thursday, September 24th. When you're done, don't forget to turn it in. And again, this is when you're done, not before. So once you finish both Google Forms, or just the one if you only have the one, submit them, and then turn it in on Google Classroom. And that's it. If you have any questions, please contact me. Have a great rest of your Thursday.